labeling happen, it needs to happen fairly quickly. You might be printing labels now that won't be used for a long time. And so even after November 1st, if you have previously printed materials that comply with previous versions of the logo use and claims guides, those can still be used, but we would not allow new materials to be printed following that November 1st, 2021 deadline. So this is the timeline. So in between, from November 1st of this year to November 1st of next year, you can transition kind of as it makes the most sense for you. Once you dig into what's new about the claims policy, specifically, I think the biggest change is going to be around language, but you can kind of watch for that and see how much of that you want to go ahead and transition now, just to put yourself in a good position for the timeline. So that is the end of my section. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Coulter for the overview. And we brought Sarah on to help us draft this new claims policy. Sarah with Helbor Consulting LLC brings a decade of experience in sustainability to her work in voluntary standards and certifications, program design, development and operations, hybrid business models, technical design and management, and forging strategic partnerships. She enjoys sharing her knowledge of supply chain sustainability and standards claims and marketing as a guest speaker and writer for diverse audiences worldwide. She holds a Master of Science in Sustainable Management from Columbia University in the city of New York. And she was a great partner in this process. Stephanie and I worked with her really closely to get all of this updated, and she really challenged us and I think made the claims policy much, much better than it would have been on our own, definitely. So with that, Sarah, I will pass it to you.
Thank you, Ashley. Flattered and pleased. So it's been great to work with you guys, and I'm really excited to roll this out and introduce it to you all. If you want to advance the slide, we can talk about how we actually developed the new policy. So as Ashley mentioned, and I'm sure many of you already know, there were several existing logo use and claims guides for each, one for each standard. And, there had been some duplication error or some, difficulty keeping everything aligned between all of the different versions and release dates. So that, sort of rectifying that was one of the primary goals. And so that is where we started with reviewing each one of those and sort of seeing where the discrepancies were, where there was duplication, how we could, getting a general overview of how we could harmonize all of these different existing policies. And sort of in parallel to that, of course, doing the research on what are the standards and other sort of comparable organizations that are working on claims. What are they doing? What are the best practices? We relied heavily on ICL's guidance. They have an excellent credible claims guide that we relied on quite a bit, as well as, of course, looking at what the legal rules are in various jurisdictions. Of course, it's important to note that everyone is responsible for making sure that whatever their claims are comply with the rules in their jurisdictions. But to have a general idea in mind, what the context is from a regulatory point of view. So from all of that, review and research, we sort of had two tracks going in parallel. One, the development of the policy itself, so the rules that that really frame up the claims use guide. So, taking that existing work that we've done, we did a benchmarking and gap analysis exercise to see, okay, where are we meeting, industry best practice? you know, what's good about what we already have, which was a lot. And, you know, how can we align the provisions among these various standards? So then drafting that harmonized policy and doing the stakeholder consultation. Then on the other side of that, and this is really the big change that I think most people are going to be most interested in learning about, is the development of the allowed claim language. So, you know, in previous versions of this guidance, there had been suggested uses of what claims language might look like. And in a pretty substantial shift, Textile Exchange and its standards are now going to allowed claim language, which means that the language that you can use for your claims is actually scripted. And we feel like that will really streamline approvals and add a lot of clarity for people, you know, who may, you know, have wondered in the past, well, I don't know, this is ambiguous, you know, is this phrasing okay? Or, you know, is it too far? Now there's clarity around that. And so we hope that that makes the claims easier for folks to use. If you want to go to the next slide. So what's in the policy itself is fairly straightforward. Just an introduction, of course, to what the policy is and why it exists. And then getting into the meat of the document, talking about the different types of claims that are included in the policy. And Stephanie will get more into this in a moment, but we have general marketing claims, assured claims, agreement-based claims, and informational statements. And the sections on those in the policy discuss both what those types of claims are, and then we give the allowed language for each of those types of claims. And then the rest of the policy talks about how to get your claims approved, what kind of record keeping processes will be put in place to help everyone keep track of everything. And then some additional tools. One that I would like to highlight is the Appendix B, the product related claims eligibility flow chart. We hope that this will be a really useful tool, particularly for brands and retailers, as they try to decide if they can or cannot make product related claims. And then Appendix C and Appendix D talk a little bit more specifically to provide examples of what the allowed language is and to give examples of what assured claims look like. If you want to advance to the next slide. So as I said, Stephanie will get a little more into this shortly, but just to give an overview, the way we've organized the different types of claims is really related to the way that each of these types of claims relates to the assurance models employed by Textile Exchange. So if there's any kind of confusion, you know, as you're looking at that, just keep that in mind, that this all relates back to assurance and the chain of custody and what is credible to say for each of those types of things. So we have general marketing claims, and these really center around commitments to the standards. So we've got corporate commitment claims, which is, of course, where a certified or a non-certified organization wishes to state publicly that they are committed to a particular textile exchange standard if they have a goal related to a particular standard. And then, of course, following on that would be a progress claim. How far have we come toward our goal? Assured claims are fairly straightforward as well. They are claims that are in some way about a certification of a company or a product. So there's an assurance exercise that is associated with those claims. So those are claims by certified organizations and product related claims. And those product related claims can be on or off the product. Then we have agreement-based claims, which are for entities that have some kind of written agreement with Textile Exchange that defines a relationship. So for example, international working group members, CBs, ABs, and data intermediaries, folks who have the ability to say we have a certain kind of relationship with Textile Exchange and may want to use logos in their marketing materials, but those claims are not trying to say anything specific about Textile Exchange or its standards, just that they have a relationship of a certain kind with Textile Exchange. And then informational statements are pretty straightforward. They are factual statements about the various standards, and they should be used really in conjunction with these other types of claims. I think Stephanie will give some more examples, more specific examples, but just, as a kind of general overview, if you're making a corporate commitment claim and you want to say, we have committed to source X amount of material, to whatever standard by this date, then of course you would want to tell your constituents what that standard is about. So that's what the informational statements are meant to address. What is allowed and credible to say factually about each of the standards on their own. Can you advance the slides? So then getting into the standard logo use specifications, not much has changed here other than things have been consolidated and cleaned up in terms of the way certain specifications are presented. Duplication error has been, fixed. The color specs have been made uniform. So if we can go over to actually look at that document itself, it's a really actually quite lovely guide. It has lots of beautiful illustrations. So you can see for every logo, there's a consistent way that we want things to be presented. So you've got the specs on, minimum size, how much space needs to be around the logo, positioning and allowed language of, text claims that are associated with a particular logo. So all of this content has not really changed. We've just consolidated it and cleaned it up in the hope that it's easier for people to use consistently. You'll see, in addition to, providing the image files themselves, we've also printed the color specs for each logo. So people shouldn't have any trouble working with their designers to make something that is in compliance. On the logo application, you can see there's some really good examples of allowed versus not allowed placements, and some guidance on what to do if you're not sure if your placement and application is allowed. So that should be a really, really useful guide. You want to be sure to get your designers and your communications team a copy of this document. And with that, I will hand it over to Stephanie to get into the real meat of the policy.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction to the policy. And thank you also so much for your work on it. As Ashley mentioned, you were so very helpful in bringing this to where it needs to be today. So now I would like to walk you through working with the standards claims policy through the lens, as Sarah mentioned, of each of the different claims categories. So starting with assured claims, as a reminder, these are the claims that are verified by a certification body. So they're making reference to a certification of a company or a product. So we'll first take a look at claims by certified organizations themselves. So these are simply claims that any certified brand, retailer, supplier, or any other organization that could be certified may make about their organization certification. So, and of course, this needs to be done in accordance with the standards claims policy. So if the claim is not about a specific product, then it does not need to go through an official approval process as outlined in our policy. However, it's important to note that these types of claims may be subject to approval through your certification body, and it would usually be checked during your annual audit. So now for product-related claims, which, as Sarah mentioned, may appear on or off product. So the process for brands and retailers to make these type of assured product-related claims is actually the same as it was with our previous logo use and claims guides. So if you're familiar with that process, rest assured, not much has changed. If you're new to the whole process, then hopefully this will be helpful. So it, of course, always starts by reading and understanding the standards claims policy. You know, definitely if you are familiar with the old guide, this is where it does change actually. You will need to understand the new policy itself. Then you'll determine if your product that you're looking to make a claim about is actually eligible. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that in addition to the great resource that Sarah mentioned in the Appendix B, I think, in the policy for the quick reference, the flow chart to eligibility. So after you determine if you're eligible to make a claim on your product, then you'll contact your certification body to begin a claim approval. If your organization is not certified yourself, then you can go through the certification body of your direct supplier, so usually the garment manufacturer who is certified. After contacting the CB, then they will get back to you with instructions for making that claim approval or going through the process. They'll provide the design files for the logos that you'll need, so you can design your artwork following the logo use specifications that we just looked at and submit this for approval with the certification body. You'll await for the approval. If they come back to you with changes, then make those changes. And finally, you'll be able to attach the label or publish your artwork. And here, the little note is that only certified organizations are actually allowed to physically attach labels and hang tags to products themselves. So again, if you are a brand or a retailer who's not certified, then you'll need to request that your garment manufacturer does this for you. So determining eligibility for making that product related claim can be done through two pretty simple steps, actually. First, you need to use the chart that is provided in the logo or the standards claims policy to determine whether or not your product meets the minimum content percentage and blending or mixing requirements for the standard you're looking to use. So they're all outlined there for you to make that determination. And then the second thing is to ensure that the product that you're looking to make a claim on is certified up to the seller in the last business to business transaction. So we're always saying this, last business to business transaction. So that's really, when you look at this chart, it's the step just before the product goes to the consumer. So in between these last two little bubbles, blue bubbles, you need to make sure that basically anyone in this row along this way is certified. So you'll see the little green badge with check mark signifies that this is a certified company, and as long as they are certified, then a product related claim is allowed. If they are not certified and then they're selling onward to another business before it goes to the consumer, then a product related claim is not allowed. So hopefully these two resources are helpful to determine eligibility, but again, as we mentioned, that appendix resource is also a great little flow chart to take a look at in the policy document itself. So the process for certified suppliers who are selling products to brands or retailers that are looking to label on the product is fairly straightforward as well. These suppliers will most often simply be on the receiving end of the approval process from the certification body. And then thus, attaching the label on behalf of the brand. However, it is useful for suppliers to read and understand the standards claims policy and the approval process, since many times if the brand or retailer is not certified, a lot of times they're not required to be certified, they may request that their direct supplier or garment manufacturer who is certified apply for the claim approval on their behalf. So it's good to be aware of this process if you are one of those suppliers that are providing certified products to brands or retailers. And just to mention that in other instances, if a certified supplier would like to make a B2B claim about their certified products, then they may do so as long as they have the proper documentation. So the scope certificate or transaction certificates that they receive from their certification body are some examples of that documentation. And details regarding this situation will be written into the content claim standard, which is currently under revision for suppliers to follow. So agreement-based claims are probably the most straightforward category in the policy. If an organization has a written contract with Textile Exchange, they may be approved to make claims about their relationship or their work that they're doing with Textile Exchange through that written agreement itself. So there's no outside process for them to be approved to make a claim. It's usually just written into that document. For example, a brand member of an international working group, or IWG as we call them, for the development of one of our standards will have the approval to make claims about their association with the group or their work with the group in the IWG charter that they sign. Certification bodies and accreditation bodies will also have this written into their contracts with Textile Exchange. And then we have general marketing claims, which are those corporate commitment claims and progress updates and informational statements. These two different types of claims actually have the same way of being approved, which is a new way of being approved or registered through Textile Exchange. So the process looks like this. You will, of course, always begin by reading and understanding the standards claims policy and determining which type of claim you would like to make between these two. You'll fill in the online standards claims registration form. So I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. This is kind of the new piece that we've developed in relation to these type of non-assured claims. So in filling in the online form, you'll provide the details of the claim or statement that you are looking to make. And then Textile Exchange will process that submission, provide a response in 3 to 5 days or so, and the logos will be provided after review of the submission. So this is where we often in the past have gotten a lot of people, companies who are looking to make claims, just general marketing type of claims, or using our standards as a way of using our logos or information about the standards to talk about the work that they're doing. And they come to us, but we would often say, oh, you need to go to your certification body to get logos because we wouldn't normally distribute them. So now we actually have a defined means of doing this through the standards claims registration form. And finally, once you have those logos, you design any artwork following the logo use specifications, and then your general marketing claim or informational statement, or the combination of the two, may be made. So here's a little glimpse at the standards claims registration form itself, and the link below. We can also drop that into the chat box before the end of this webinar. But just to reiterate that this claims registration form on the Textile Exchange website is specifically for registering general marketing claims, informational statements. And actually, if you are looking to use Textile Exchange certification data, this is also where you would apply for that. And then also to reiterate that this registration form is not at all for assured claims. So those claims about or by certified organizations or product related claims on or off product, labeling, hang tags, all that type of, all those type of claims need to be approved through a certification body. And finally, we get a lot of questions about claims through Textile Exchange, but there's actually a few different venues for asking questions to get the right answer. So if you have questions about your assured claims, about the products that you'd like to label, or whether or not you qualify to make a product related claim, you should ask your certification body or a certification body, one that's working with your garment manufacturer. So they are the best person to walk you through the process to help you understand whether or not you qualify. But if you have questions about general marketing claims, informational statements, agreement-based claims, all those other categories of claims, you can ask Textile Exchange, and we have a new email address, which is claims@textileexchange.org, that you may forward those queries to. So with that, we always are encouraging you to ask more questions, and now we will go into a Q&A session. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, both Sarah and Stephanie, for the presentation. And we have lots of questions. Feel free to keep adding those in. I'm not sure that we'll be able to get to all of them, but definitely keep adding them in. And if we don't have time to cover them during this Q&A portion, then we can follow up with you through email. But we do have quite a bit of time for questions, so feel free to keep dropping those in. The first question that we got was related to GRS and RCS, and actually there were a few questions around that. The first question was, for the product-specific claims under GRS and RCS, don't we need to mention post-consumer or pre-consumer? And Stephanie, I can take that one, or I'll let you take it if you want.
You go ahead.
Okay, so actually with the RCS and GRS, we, even in the current version, both in the previous and the new version, we do not require labeling of pre-consumer or post-consumer recycled content for the final customer on the final product. We do require it on the transaction certificate, but it's never been required in the final language. We felt that, you know, we actually think there's probably a good reason to start requiring that, specifically when it's pre-consumer material. But given where a lot of the FTC guidelines were, we felt like it was better not to be prescriptive, and also to let the International Working Group for the GRS answer that question. So it is not required on final product labeling for the consumer, although it is required on transaction certificates. There was another question around, can we mention, quote, sustainability for GRS general marketing, in parentheses, without saying 100% or 100% sustainable? Can we use that term, sustainability? And I think either one of you probably could answer this question.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, first of all, we have the scripted allowed language, and I don't believe that any of that includes the word sustainability when talking about the GRS. However, I would say that it is possible that if you provide enough information about the GRS in the proper context and following what the language that we've provided, that there could be some flexibility around using that term. However, of course, definitely not mentioning 100% sustainable. It's just something that maybe could be squeezed in certain instances, but it shouldn't be used as the key term for describing the GRS or any of our standards. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Ashley, but that's kind of my take on it.
This is Sarah. Actually, I would just add that there's a lot of I don't want to say danger, but it's tricky to use that term in a credible way. So for the purposes of protecting, the rigor and credibility of the standards, we would discourage that use. That's why it's not included in the allowed claims language. If you're making, if you're describing your commitment to using one of those standards in your, your annual report or in some other kind of marketing material, I think, as Stephanie suggested, I think we would assume that you probably would at some point use a word like sustainable or sustainability somewhere in that, in the context of your, description of your sustainability programs. But in terms of the claim itself, we wouldn't discourage that. It would not be allowed because the definition of sustainability is not, universally agreed upon. The metrics that different stakeholders think are the most important to defining credible sustainability are wildly different. So that's the reason that we don't use words like sustainability in the actual allowed language for the claim, for the standards.
Yeah, thank you both. And I don't have anything to add. I think you both said it very well. One quick question, I may have missed this info. When will this document be public? And it is actually public today. It's been launched and is available on the website. You can go to the standards page. If you haven't visited Textile Exchange's website in a while, you should definitely go check out the standards page. We have a lot more content. Things are a lot easier to find than they have been in the past with our update. And there is a document center. And actually, because these are some of the newest documents that we've released, they're right on the top of that list. Both the standards claim policy and the logos use specifications document are both listed there. The other question that this has kind of come up in a few different places, but we had a question around, sorry, I'm just scrolling up and down here. The scope of the product level RCS and GRS claims. So can you go back to, Stephanie, the slide where you listed the first step into determining eligibility? So the question is, the chart shared in part 1 of determining eligibility leaves questions when considering garments with complex construction. For example, are trims, accessories, or linings considered in scope? And so this chart right here, or sorry, Stephanie, you want to take that?
No, you can continue. Actually, you're on.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's this question: are trims, accessories, or linings considered in scope? And then we have another question around if a jacket is certified under the GRS and all the fabrics are 100% recycled, but for example, not the zippers and buttons, but they represent less than 1% recycled, how do you proceed? So for all cases, we allow for this calculation to be done, excluding trims. So if it's something like a zipper or a button, they don't have to be included within that final percentage. Another thing to point out in the claims policy, it's subtle enough that if you're not really looking for it, you might not find it. But we have listed, there's a line here right above this table in the document itself that says the product or claimed component meets the following minimum content calculated by weight and blending mixing requirements. And so the product can exclude trims and accessories in that calculation, but we also allow for components to be used as like the threshold of that percentage. And so it may sound a little bit like a complicated answer, but trims and accessories do not need to be calculated as part of the overall percentage. You can just do the final product exclusive of those things. And if you want to call out a specific component of a product, that's allowed as long as that component is easily understood by the consumer. So hopefully that answers that question. So there's so many questions that I'm getting lost a little bit. One question, can you please explain the difference between option 1 and 3 in the transaction flow model? And I think it's the slide just following this one.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
So the difference between option 1 and 3. So I am assuming we're looking at the first row here where the garment manufacturer is certified, but the brand is not. And then we're looking at the garment manufacturer is certified and the brand is certified. So, I mean, that's really that's the only difference, is that the brand is certified. In option number 3, this scenario is actually not necessary where the brand is certified. So as we mentioned, that this seller in the last business to business transaction needs to be certified. So where the garment manufacturer is certified and the brand is not, that's allowed because the brand is selling directly to consumers. So another way of thinking about it is that if you are selling directly to consumers, as retailers usually do, but brands often do as well, then you do not need to be certified, but your direct supplier does. So as you can see in options 3 and 4, both the brand and retailer are certified, and those are just there for just to show that that instance is allowed. Of course, it's actually kind of going above and beyond, but it is allowed. So really what you want to be looking at is to make sure that this, yeah, like I said, the second to last blue bubble is certified in this row here. So you'll see in the last row, the brand who's selling through the retailer to the retailer, and that last business transaction is not certified, and that's where a product related claim is not allowed. So I hope that makes sense. I guess, yeah, it could be a little bit confusing to see that these two options here where this organization is certified, but it is always allowed in that case.
Great, thank you. We have 2 questions also that are slightly similar, so I'm going to group them together. The first is how to handle if I find non-certified company or brand using the logo incorrectly. And then on the other side of this, how do you manage unapproved or incorrect claims with certified organizations? So Stephanie, you want to take that one?
Sure. So if you found a non-certified company or brand using the logo, we actually do have a standards complaints form that's linked through our website. We can also try to get that link somewhere in the chat or in the follow-up, but that is one of the primary places to go through. If you find something like that out in the world, we would love to hear about it. In that case, we will follow up with the entity which is making or misusing the logo. In the other instance where I'm trying to look for the questions. So what was the second question relating to?
Yeah, they were both just, really it was the same question, but maybe is there any distinction between how we handle it if it's a certified company versus if it's a non-certified company that's maybe made the incorrect logo use?
I would say if it is a certified company, then we will work with the certification body to remedy that situation or see what's actually going on there. A lot of times it's a misunderstanding of the claims policy or the logo use specifications. So we can have the certification body work with them on fixing those claims and making them appropriate for the marketplace. Otherwise, we do have some other options to withdraw certification or other type of punishment if they are not willing to make those changes or if they're consistently making false claims in the marketplace. So, but that is working with the certification body. If it's not a certified company, then we will do our best to reach out to them and try to also remedy that situation with them if it's a misunderstanding. And yeah, that's about the extent that we can do there. If they're not certification, we don't have direct contact. If they're not certified and we don't have direct contact with them, we try to reach out and have an open discussion with them about what they're doing.
Thanks. This question, I think I would maybe like to pose it to you, Sarah. The question is, again, general marketing, is it okay to use the logo without language around it? So I think the bigger question here is kind of what type of general marketing communication about the standards is in scope, and then, what would you suggest a company wanted to do if they wanted to use the logo in some way? And feel free to, answer this, and I can jump in if I need to.
Sure. So just so I'm clear, the question is around, in the context of general marketing, can a company use the logo without
But
a
not
text
the language.
claim?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine how that would work. So perhaps, if it's some kind of general marketing material that talks about, your various sustainability programs, and then you have perhaps a collection of logos at the bottom of the page or something like that. I could see that existing, but again, it's hard for me to see why you wouldn't want to include the claim language, at least an informational statement about the standard. So I think within the context of what we've laid out in the policy and just sort of general communications good practice, we would not want to see the logo just standing alone without a contextual framing in either a corporate commitment claim, a progress claim, or an informational statement. So yeah, I think I would need a more specific question to get into more detail than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is kind of the same idea that I was thinking, because built into that, maybe it's not within the question, is that my assumption is that you are essentially wanting to replace our allowed language with something else, because I'm imagining you wouldn't want to just put the logo up without any context, as you mentioned, Sarah. And that's definitely not something that we would allow. And if we saw that, we would want to reach out and get that language updated. There is, in the opening context of the document, we have kind of stated the intended scope of the claims policy, and there is some kinds of references to the standards that may not be within the scope of the document. So if you want to talk about something that you're planning to do in terms of like a policy statement, or that you have a policy only to accept incoming material, there are some limited examples of things that are not included within the scope of this. But even in that case, we would still suggest using the logo with the informational statement that explained what the standard did. We wouldn't want you to come up with your own statement of what the standard is intended to do, because that's where we can get into a little bit of trouble around making slightly, maybe the language doesn't seem that different to you, but for us, it's a really important distinction, like using the term guarantee, for example. You won't see the word guarantee anywhere in our allowed language, because that's not what the standard is intended to do. And so in order to protect you from making those kinds of potentially misleading claims, the allowed language is really there to ensure that what the intended outcomes of the standard are obvious within the language. So hopefully that is helpful. There's a few questions around, looks like we've got still about 10 more minutes, but there's a few questions around the approval process. So for general marketing claims, is the expectation that proof of Textile Exchange approved claims will be held by the entity so that CBs can verify the approval. And I'm going to take that one. This question is actually from a certification body, and we will be also, if you're a certification body on this call, we will be doing a training for our certification bodies. So be watching for that in the next couple or few months. But the idea with the general marketing claims is that they don't have the same kind of formulaic approval process that the product specific claims do. And so as Stephanie pointed out, we have a registration a registration form where companies that want to make that general marketing claim can fill out the form. That way Textile Exchange kind of knows who they are, what they're doing. And the idea is not that we would then pass that on to the certification bodies for their approval. What we are expecting in the future is that the approval or the review of all claims made by a certified company will start to be within the scope of the certification process, so that certification bodies are looking at, what is the company saying about the certification, and is that in line with the claims policy? But there's not an explicit approval step for general marketing claims. So hopefully that helped that. There's one more on the product content. Does Textile Exchange verify product content in order to allow the product claims, or is this managed by responsibility of the brand making the claim? And maybe Stephanie, you can go back to the product approval process, and you can talk a little bit about the role of the certification body in that process.
Yes. Yes, here it is. So when we're talking about verifying the product content, so one thing I should have mentioned in the second step, when you're trying to determine if your product is eligible and you need to verify that minimum content percentage and the blending requirements and all of that, this is also where the certification body can assist you. They can assist you in looking at the product that the certified product and calculating by weight the percentage of the content and determining whether or not that product meets that minimum content requirement. So I think that's kind of, is working with the certification body to help you determine all of those eligibility requirements.
Great, thank you very much. So it looks like that the link to the download center at the bottom of the labeling and claims page still says coming soon. So we might need to do a couple of website updates for that. Thanks for your help there. And then let's see. There was a question around the product claim versus a content claim. So if a product doesn't qualify for a product related claim, is there still an ability to make some kind of content or component claim on that product? Stephanie, you want to take that one?
So if the product...
So basically let's say you have a product and it doesn't meet these or the eligibility requirements that you had, the table with the blending, or maybe the percentage isn't there or the full certification isn't there. Is there any kind of claim on that product that could still be made, or would that be prohibited?
That would be prohibited. It must meet the minimum content requirements for labeling, as well as the blending and mixing requirements.
Thank you. There's one question here that I think I'm going to need more information to be able to answer it well, or for any of us to be able to answer it well. It says, is there guidance in the new claims policy regarding items that are sent back as a return to a company? Do hang tags need to be reapplied to the garments? And I think if there's a specific instance like this, that it would probably be better to come to us directly with a little bit more detail. In general, hang tags can't be reapplied to the garment by a non-certified company. And so that would be probably, I would imagine, the biggest barrier there. But yeah, we haven't seen this example before, but yeah, feel free to contact us with more information if you need a better answer to that. A lot of the questions that we have left are pretty technical. You stated that if a brand or retailer is not required to be certified, the supplier may apply for approval on behalf of them. Is there another option? In any case, only the certified organization is allowed to apply the logo.
So yeah, I'm just trying to think through that. Is there another option? In any case, you only certify. So if the brand or retailer is not required to be certified or is not certified at all, yes, they may go through the supplier for the approval. However, the brand or retailer may also contact the certification body themselves. We recommend contacting the certification body of your certified direct supplier so that there's consistency in the certification body's understanding of that product and its certification. You may also contact any certification body that is approved in your region or that you may be able to communicate with for this process. So if you're not certified, the only option, going through your supplier is not the only option. You may also go to the certification body directly yourself. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. One more, to confirm certificate's authenticity, it is useful to be able to reference your website. Sometimes the website does not appear to be up to date. How often is it updated, and what other method is available to check certificate validity if it doesn't correspond with the information on your website, your being Textile Exchange's website? And I know, Stephanie, this is an area that you work in a lot.
Yeah. So I can definitely answer that. Yeah. So first of all, apologies for the difficulty in accessing the what we call Find Certified Companies page. It is actually a super useful resource when it is working properly. However, due to the sheer volume of data and number of certified sites that we have, recently the table that we're using, it gets bogged down quite a bit and loads either very, very slowly or doesn't load at all. So if you're having problems with that, accessing that page to verify a certification, you can email us directly at standards@textileexchange.org to see if we can check the list in our backend through our own files. Otherwise, you can also contact the certification body yourself. So if you know the certification body that is responsible for the certification of the organization that you're looking to verify, you can contact them. And they oftentimes on their own websites, they have databases where you can search it yourself. So that's another option. And another important thing to note here is that we do only provide information that is given to us on a monthly basis from our certification bodies, and sometimes there are delays in receiving that data. So that list online is not always up to date. So again, if you're having problems with that, you can contact us. You can contact the certification body to verify. One thing more that I would like to mention is that we are looking to develop a more advanced database for this. So fingers crossed that in the next in the coming year we'll have something that's a little bit easier to use. But we're also looking for interim solutions for breaking up that table maybe by standard so that they load and actually work properly for everyone to use. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Stephanie. I know we just have 3 minutes left and there's still more questions. I know some of the questions came through anonymously. We might be able to follow up with you on the back end with your name, but if you don't hear from us within 2 or 3 days, just feel free to send that question in again to standards@textileexchange.org. And the very, very lovely, kind ladies will be able to help you with those questions. I think with that, just given how technical a lot of the other questions are that we have, that we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you very, very much to all of our attendees today for joining us for this session and for the lively Q&A. And Stephanie and Sarah, thank you again for your time. Sarah Coulter, thank you so much for all the work that you've done to help support us in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ashley. And again, thank you to our speakers, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, again, all unanswered questions will be answered via email, and an email will be sent to all registered participants with a link to today's presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.